The question I would like to put to you is the question at the heart of my new book, What Money Can't Buy, The Moral Limits of Markets. The question is this: what should be the role of money and markets in a good society? I would like to put this as a question to you so that we can engage in discussion about it. Are you ready to engage in that discussion? Yes. All right. Now, we have people with microphones who can come, and when I call on people, although I see that the aisles are full of people, so I'm not quite sure how the microphones will reach you. But let's see, where are the microphones? Who has microphones for the audience? Do they exist? Do we have, how many audience microphones do we have? We have 7. All right, so let me see if the people holding the microphones could raise your hands, just so I'll see. Where are they? 1, 2, 3, but how are you going to get in? Maybe someone should go up on this aisle in the middle. Who can go over? All right, and what about over here? Where are the microphones? All right, let's have someone go over to the middle here. Okay. Now, I want to begin by recognizing that markets can do great things. There are 2 arguments in favor, at least 2 arguments in favor of market economies and the use of markets to allocate goods. One argument is that market economies are valuable tools for organizing productive activity. And market economies have brought economic growth, prosperity, and affluence to countries around the world, and certainly to China in the last 3 decades. We know that. So that's one great advantage of markets. There is also a second great advantage to markets and market relations, and that has to do not with economic growth and rising prosperity, but with the ideal of freedom, the freedom to decide for yourself whether to exchange a good for money, or whether to buy a good for money. And so markets have these 2 great advantages. Market economies contribute to economic growth. They're a good way of organizing the production of goods. And market relations seem to offer a certain kind of freedom. But in recent decades, we have come to assume, perhaps because of these 2 advantages, we have come to assume that markets and money can define for us the meaning of the public good. And even that they can define for us a just society. And this assumption, I think, is mistaken. But it's easy to understand how many of us have been tempted by this assumption. And by us, I mean people around the world who have enjoyed the benefits of market economies. I think in the last 3 decades, we have drifted, almost without realizing it, from having market economies to becoming market societies. A market economy is a tool. It's a tool for organizing productive activity. But a market society is different. A market society is a place where everything is up for sale. It's a place where there is a price tag on almost every aspect of human activity. A market society is a place where money and market values come to dominate every aspect of life. And that, I think, is the direction in which many of our societies, including my own, and perhaps also including China, we'll hear in the discussion whether you think that's true, that, I think, is the direction in which we've headed. And so, in writing this book, I wanted to invite and encourage reflection about this condition, discussion about whether we want to live in a society where everything is up for sale. And if not, what other values should govern human relationships and social life? What values beyond buying and selling goods together? What else connects us in various aspects of our lives? So those are admittedly philosophical questions, but they're philosophical questions that we can't avoid if we're to think clearly about the world in which we live, a world that increasingly is governed by money and markets. I've been talking about abstract ideas and values and principles, freedom and justice and a good society. But in order to think about them and to begin a discussion about them, I'd like to invite you to offer your views about an incident, a story that I read about, an incident that occurred in China recently, where a 17-year-old boy sold his kidney to a surgeon. In exchange, he got money that he used to buy, do you know what he bought? You all know the story. He bought an iPad and an iPhone. Now, he got a total of $35,000, that's quite a lot of money for a kidney. He could probably have bought several iPhones and iPads. But it didn't go so well for him because he then had health complications. Meanwhile, the surgeon and the brokers who organized the purchase of the kidney, they made perhaps 10 times what they paid the 17-year-old for the kidney, because there was a wealthy person willing to pay a lot of money for a kidney transplant. Here's our first question, and I'd like to see what your opinion is by a show of hands. How many think that buying and selling kidneys is morally objectionable, is wrong? And how many think it's okay, that it's a free market and there's nothing wrong with it? So let's take the vote now. Raise your hand, those of you who think that buying and selling kidneys, as was done in this case, is wrong, is morally objectionable. There's something wrong with it. Raise your hand. You think that? Quite a few people. And how many don't think there's anything wrong with it? How many think that this is a matter of freedom of choice and people should be free to buy and sell kidneys if they want to? How many think that? Raise your hand. A handful of people, perhaps a couple dozen. So to begin our discussion, I would like to hear from those who object. What exactly is wrong with it? Who will offer a reason? Why do you think it's wrong, if you do think it's wrong, to buy and sell kidneys? Yes. And stand up.
Well, I think it's wrong because if someone who is wealthy can get a kidney, and what about someone that is poor? If someone that is poor, he has a very serious disease, and maybe it's money dominance what he gets. So I think it's unfair. So I think in a society, everyone can get a welfare.
Okay, now let me ask you a question, but first tell us your name.
I'm Zoe. You can call me Zoe.
Zoe.
You want to know my Chinese name?
Sure.
Well, Zheng Zhuoyi.
Zheng Zhuoyi? Did I get that wrong?
Well, Zoe, that's okay.
Oh, you think I do better with Zoe? All right. Let me ask you this. You say it's unfair because the rich can afford to buy kidneys from the poor, and poor people who need kidneys can't afford to buy them. Do you think, so it's unfair to poor people who might need a kidney but can't afford $35,000. Do you think it's also unfair to the 17-year-old who sold his kidney?
You mean it's unfair to? Yeah, I think it's unfair because everyone. I think maybe a person's body is sometimes separated from his spirit. The body is not it's not controlled. It belongs not only to you, your spirit, but also belongs to. This is a whole life. So if you transparent give your kidney to others, maybe you feel it's okay, but in fact. For the respect of a person, it is not respect of life. Okay, that's very interesting. Yeah. So that's really very interesting, and you put it very well. So you've now actually given us two reasons to object. Yes.
To a free market in kidneys.
Yeah, for two aspects.
Two aspects, exactly. Yeah. That's terrific. What do you study?
German.
German. Wow.
Sorry.
And what's your German name? You didn't tell us that.
I don't have German name because I belong to China. So.
No, I know. I'm just kidding.
Thank you.
All right, that's very good. So Zoe has given us two objections to buying and selling a free market in kidneys. One of them is a fairness objection, that it's unfair to the poor who can't afford $35,000. If they need a kidney, they can't have one, and rich people can. That's one objection. Let's call that the fairness objection. And then Zoe has articulated a very interesting second objection, which is that somehow there is when the 17-year-old sold his kidney, even though he wanted the money and the iPad and the iPhone, and even though he got them, and even though it was his choice, Zoe says maybe there is some failure of respect for the person and his bodily integrity. And maybe there's some connection, Zoe suggested, even between the spirit of a person and the integrity of his body that was somehow violated when the 17-year-old sold his kidney for money. So this is a very interesting second objection. Now I would like to hear from someone who defends a free market in kidneys, who thinks there's nothing wrong with it. What would you say to, yes, go ahead. What would you say to the two objections that Zoe has raised? And here's, before you speak, Zoe, let's give the microphone back to Zoe. Stand up and tell us your name, first of all.
My name is Peng Yibing.
Yibing, you defend a free market in kidneys, right?
Yes.
All right. I want you to speak directly to Zoe and see if you can persuade her why there should be a free market in kidneys despite the two objections she raised.
Okay, the first one, I think both the poor and the rich deserve health. But for those poor, they can run a lottery system, like they bought lottery, so the poor can lottery for the kidney. And the rich people, they can buy kidney from the market. So eventually, both the rich and poor can have the healthy kidney.
Well, wait, let me understand the lottery.
Lottery.
All right, so there would be a lottery if a poor person needs a kidney and doesn't have $35,000 to give to the 17-year-old, then you're suggesting that there could be a lottery, and whose kidneys would go into the lottery exactly?
Those one who want to donate their kidney.
I see. So people who voluntarily agree to donate their kidney, do you mean for pay or for free?
Both. Either of them. So definitely someone who want to donate the kidney for free.
Right. Well, I can imagine a lottery system using the kidneys that were donated by people. But if the kidneys are also, if there's a price on some of the kidneys, how do those people get paid in the lottery system? Who pays them?
There has to be a fund to pay them.
Okay, so
this is only one system that I just thought of just now.
Okay.
I'm sure there will be a better solution.
So you could have, and who would contribute the money for the fund to buy the kidneys that will be distributed by lottery? Would it be the government?
Yes. All people can pay $2 for one chance in the lottery, and the fund $2 each time, and there will be millions of dollars in the fund.
And from the $2 entry fee to the lottery, you will gather a large fund that can be used to buy $35,000 kidneys from people willing to pay, willing to give.
Yeah, maybe.
To sell, rather.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's one idea. So you create a lottery, and poor people could enter the lottery, but I imagine, Zoe will say to that, only a few of the people will win the lottery. What about the rest?
Sure, the supply is way less than the demand.
Yes.
So there has to be someone who has to have nothing. So lottery is the fair solution to that.
All right, but you also, in addition to your lottery system, you will allow rich people to offer, if they lose the lottery, a rich person can buy a kidney on the open market for as much money as is necessary to buy it, right?
Yes.
But then how does that, well, Zoe, are you happy with that plan?
Well, I'm not convinced by his opinion.
Well, speak to him about it.
First, I wonder if you have two systems. One is one you have to pay for, and the other is lottery system. And I wonder what amount of share would you get on the two systems? Will they be equal, or will the system who paid get the most share? So yeah, I think it's not it's unfair.
Oh well, actually, Zoe has an interesting point. What if a rich person, the lottery tickets only cost $2? What if a rich person buys 10,000 lottery tickets, or 100,000?
He don't have to pay 100,000 for a ticket because he can already buy a kidney less than 100,000.
Oh, all right, fair enough. What do you study? Economics by any chance?
Finance.
Finance. Okay, so you might even be able to work out a financial fund to deal with it. All right, what do you say to Zoe's second objection?
Second, because I study economics, and I think every adult is an economic man, that he has to be responsible for his behaviors. If someone has seen the donation through, he clearly knows the consequence of losing one kidney, and he is willing to take the risk, and we should give him the chance to take that risk.
To choose for himself. A lot of people agree with that. A lot of people agree. What about that?
But the point is that the boy may not know what might happen if he gave the kidney to the surgeon.
Yeah, in this case, the boy is only 17, so maybe it's not right for him to sell the kidney.
And there's also another occasion that when money tempts you, you may even ignore some bad results that may happen. So maybe the result is very bad, but you choose to ignore it. So that's a very objective situation here.
Like I see, the hospital must tell the donators the whole consequence of the whole donation.
Right.
And he has to sign up a few questionnaires, he has to watch some video clips. So if he understands the consequence, he should take the risk.
All right, now here's Zoe, here's a question you could use to challenge. Say your name again.
Yiping.
All right, Yiping, here's a possible challenge. Do you mind if I make this challenge to Yiping on your behalf?
But I also have
No, wait, here, I wanted to offer him a challenge.
Offer him a challenge?
Yes, Yiping said that the consent should be informed. The person deciding should be aware of the risks.
Yes.
And should watch a video and read a form and sign that the consent is truly informed of what might happen to him. And maybe the person should be older than 17 years old. How old, by the way, should the person be to give informed consent?
Well, maybe about 21.
21. Okay. So at least 21 years old, made aware of the risks,
Yes.
give informed consent. Now, suppose there is someone who meets all of those requirements, who really desperately wants the money to help his children get an education, and is willing to sell both of his kidneys, even if it means he dies.
Yeah, that's a tough question.
What do you think?
Yeah, maybe he shouldn't be allowed to do that.
All right, that's interesting. And why? Even with informed consent, even where he's explained the consequences of his act?
Because the bottom line is life itself.
Uh-huh. That's good. All right. So where life is at stake, so Yibing, you would agree in principle that there are some things that money should not buy, and life itself is one of them.
Yes.
All right. Well, we've had some very, thank you both for that opening dialogue. Really good. Now, we've been discussing matters of survival, of life and death. Of course, most goods that are bought and sold are not of that kind. They're not as serious. They're not as grave. Let's take a good that is, at least most people would agree, is not a matter of life and death, and that is an iPhone 5. A lot of people want one, and long lines form when the iPad 5 goes on sale. And some people don't have time to wait on a long line, but they still have a strong desire for an iPhone 5. So what do? Well, some people hire someone to stand on the line for them. You've heard about that. In fact, have some of you taken a job standing on the line? Anybody? No? Maybe it doesn't pay that well. Now, do you think there's anything wrong with hiring someone to wait online to buy an iPad 5 for you? Raise your hand if you think there's something wrong with that. Nobody thinks so. How many think it's fine? It's okay if you have the money. All right, almost everyone. Now, this is a very different vote from in the free market in kidneys. Oh, now, why is that? Why is it perfectly all right to hire someone? Would you also say that if someone buys an iPad 5, suppose you haven't hired a person, but you still want one, you didn't stand online, someone did buy one, waiting in line, and is willing to sell it for double the price. It's worth it to you. You don't have time to wait online. Is there anything wrong with scalping or reselling an iPhone 5 at double the price? Anything wrong with that? Two people think there's something wrong with it. Why is there something wrong? Tell us.
Hi, should I tell my name first?
Yes, please do.
Okay, my name is Long Yu.
Long Yu.
Yeah.
Long Yu.
Yeah. Sure. I think there's something wrong with hiring some people to stand in line to in order to buy iPhone 5 or iPad 5, because actually you are buying you're not buying iPhone. You're not only buying iPhone 5. You are buying chances of buying an iPhone 5. Say I'm a very rich person, and I can hire like 100 people to stand in line.
Right.
So in this case, other people can have the chance to buy any iPhone 5 or any iPad 5.
Well, suppose you hire the 100 people.
Yeah.
And so you get 100 iPhone 5s. And then since the demand
I could have 100.
Yeah, you could have 100.
Yeah,
and what would you do? Wait, what would you do with them?
I can resell it.
You can resell it. And for what price would you resell it?
Of course, higher price.
A higher price.
Maybe I can make up for the money which I used to hire these people.
Oh, you could make more than the money you spent hiring the people, probably in profit.
Yeah, so I think there's something wrong with it.
All right, and what is wrong with that exactly?
Because some people will take this advantage and make a lot of money, which is, I think this money is not supposed to be made here. And other people's, maybe some poor people's chances were deprived.
To get an iPad or an iPhone?
Yes.
All right, that's an interesting argument. Who disagrees? Most people think it's fine to hire people to line up and buy iPhone 5s. What would you say? Go ahead. What would you say to this argument?
I think it's an opportunity for entrepreneur to make a profit. So I think those people take the opportunity, so they make profit is a reasonable way.
It's a business.
Yes, it's a business.
And it's a way of making a profit.
Yes, and it is an opportunity to make opportunity that make the profits, because other people doesn't see the opportunity, but I see the I see the opportunity, so I make the profits.
All right, what would you say to that?
I want to remind you, because this situation reminds me of some similar situations in China years ago. It's in China, when Spring Festival comes, it's very hard to buy train tickets, and some businessmen will hire people, or they will do it themselves to stand in line to buy tickets and resell it with higher prices. But other people like students like us, we cannot get a ticket. So I think, and this behavior is illegal now.
Okay, that's a good. What about that? Buying up train? Would you hire 100 people to line up to buy train tickets during the Spring Festival, that would be another business opportunity, wouldn't it?
I think it's a different case.
Oh, it's a different case.
Yes, because
so do you think that that would be wrong?
Yes.
Okay, and why? Why
Because
is it different?
you know, iPad and iPhone are the goods, but however, the train ticket is not naturally goods. It's opportunity for people to go home. Because the train ticket is for us to is a kind of desire to go home with my family to reunion, just once a year to reunion. So it's quite different. And the train ticket is sold by the nation. It's not sold by the Steve Jobs.
Okay. What about that?
I don't see anything related in this case. I think, by the way, I think train tickets are definitely goods. And if you insist that they are not goods, I think iPhone 5 is not only goods. They are the chances, they are the desire of having fun with it.
What about that? The desire for a good. Some people strongly desire to go home in the Spring Festival, but other people strongly, really desire to have an iPhone 5. And you're making money off them. You're making profit from that.
I think this two fine is different.
So both involve desire, strong desire, but the desire to go home to be with your family on the Spring Festival, you say, is different. Why exactly? Because it's morally more important, it's a higher good. What's the difference?
I think the train tickets cannot be substituted. And the fine, the opportunity to have fun, such as iPhone and iPad, can be substituted by other cell phones.
I see. All right. Well, what would you say to that?
I think, what if I buy iPhone? What if I'm studying abroad and I buy iPhone 5 or iPad to have FaceTime with my family? I think it's all about the opportunity of buying something or doing something, and the rich people is using their money to deprive other people's opportunity to do this stuff.
But you still can have the Nokia Lumia 920 to contact your family
yes,
through FaceTime.
But if I have choice, I want to choose iPhone. So
it is just a choice.
Yeah. So
but for the train ticket, I have no choice. I just can't take the train to go home.
Where I think these two situations are similar is that some other people are buying opportunities of some poor people to do something. It doesn't matter whether they are buying iPhone 5 or they are buying train tickets to home. They are deprives other people's opportunity to do something. So it doesn't matter to do what or to buy what.
All right. Thank you both for this very good exchange. Thank you. What this exchange shows, there's a disagreement about whether the iPhone case and the train ticket case, whether those two cases are similar. And the argument that they're different depends on making a moral distinction between these two activities. The argument for the moral distinction is that the iPhone is just a good, whereas the train ticket home is an essential part of family life. That's the distinction. And so that although both involve desires, one desire is connected to an important set of values and moral goods to do with family life and traditions and connections, whereas having an iPhone, that's one consumer good among others, even though the desire for it may be very strong. If something, and of course, whether there really is a distinction was a matter of some disagreement here. So we see that in deciding what money and markets should and should not govern, we find ourselves very quickly debating about values and what matters in life. Is there a difference, a fundamental difference between consumer goods, where the buying and selling may represent an entrepreneurial opportunity, and higher goods, goods connected with moral values like connection with one's family and the celebration of shared traditions and festivals, in which case the train ticket, if that's true, then the train ticket is more than just a consumer good. And even though profit could be made, it would be wrong, it would be wrong to do so. Now, I'd like to ask about one other good that's in very high demand. Admission to this university. Now, it's not easy to get into this university, am I right? What did you have to do in order to qualify for admission? You had to study hard and get high grades and test scores, is that right? All right. Now, admission to a top university, that's a good that's in very high demand. And market reasoning suggests that when there's a good that's in very high demand, the price should rise. That's the law of supply and demand. So suppose this university said, well, we admit most students, and we'll continue to admit most students on the basis of academic achievement and promise, test scores and grades. We'll admit 90%, fill 90% of the places based on those traditional standards. But universities always need money to build new facilities, improve science labs, libraries. Do you have a swimming pool here? Well, maybe you need a swimming pool. And so maybe the university, to raise more money, says we'll auction off, this is back to the auction idea, we'll auction off admission for 10% of the places in the class to the children of wealthy parents who are willing to pay a lot of money. How much money do you suppose there were parents of a student who didn't score all that well on his or her grades and tests? How much money do you think a wealthy parent would pay to get his or her child into a top university like this one? How much do you think people would be willing to pay? What do you think? Yeah, you can shout out. 2 million? 2 million yuan or 2 million US dollars? What? RMB, 2 million RMB. Do you think that's right? That's a lot of money. Who thinks that it would even be higher? You think so? What do you think it would be?
I'm sorry, and I'm a little bit nervous now.
All right, that's all right. That's all right. Take your time.
I know that the price to get into the best university in Nanjing, my hometown, is more than $100 million RMB now. Oh no! I'm sorry. I'm too nervous.
No.
Just a million. Just a million. And I
million
think,
RMB.
Yes, and I think the situation depends. If it's just like a university in my hometown, maybe a million is just okay. But it's Beijing, and you need to get in the best university, so it would be much higher. And if you want to get into something like Harvard, Princeton, Yale, and I believe that will be much higher.
How much do you think that would be?
I don't know, but I heard that some of the students in my high school, their family are very rich, and they donated a library or a building to those famous universities, so their children can be a student. Yes,
yeah.
They can enter the university.
And do you think that when this happens, and you've heard that it may happen, you said under the table in Nanjing, do you think that is that a form of corruption?
Sorry?
When wealthy parents give a large donation or monetary payment to a university to get their son or daughter admitted, do you think that's a form of corruption?
Yes, I think it is. Because the university nowadays really needs a lot of money to improve their facilities, such as their labs, their libraries, and they have to use a lot of money to put into those researches and projects,
right.
So they can keep the science in a high level. Yes,
right, and keeping science at a high level costs a lot of money. It's very expensive.
Yes.
So let me ask you this. You said that it's done under the table. It's not really done openly. The payment of the money or and the admission of the student. But suppose it were openly stated and announced that any parent who donates a large amount of money, let's say 3 million RMB or 10 million, will be able to have their student admitted. So it's not under the table, it's on top of the table. It's in the open. Would there be anything wrong with that, do you think? Would that be wrong?
First, let me ask you some questions. First,
okay.
You mean they're on the table, so the amount will be just clear, or it is just okay for all of the students to be bought in?
Now, well, let's say my proposal does not say that all of the students can be bought in, but only 10%. 90% are admitted in the usual way. 10% are admitted through money, parents buying their way in. And you could do it in one of two ways. You could have a publicly declared price, let's say 5 million RMB, or you could have an auction, as was suggested for the kidney allocation. You could have an auction for those seats, those places, and the parents who bid the highest would have their children admitted. That's my proposal. What do you think about that?
First, I think it is okay. I'm fine with it. And secondly, I think for those parents are willing to spend 3 million RMB just for their kids to enter into a university, I don't think a really kind or wise or smart parents will do this kind of things. I think they will have better choice. And if they have no choice, and they just choose to do things like this, and I think they're okay because
you think
really
that would be all right? All right, I want to put this question to the whole group. How many here think that my proposal to auction off or to sell 10% of the places in this university would be just, would be acceptable, would be morally okay? How many think it would be fine?
Thank you for your support.
You have quite a bit of support. How many disagree? How many think that would be wrong? You still have quite a few people to persuade. All right, let's hear from someone who thinks it would be wrong. Why would it be wrong?
I think if you use 10% chances to admit those who donate money to enter this university, it's wrong. But if you use 100% for those who enter this course, enter this university because of their scores, is okay. And you add some extra chances to those who donate money to enter this university, is okay. Because if you use that 10%, you are depriving others chances to enter this university, and you are plundering their resources. However, if you use the extra chances to enter this university, you are using the resources whose resources who benefited from the money you donate.
Okay, that's an interesting change in the proposals. All right, we'll add that. We'll take a vote on that one. Suppose 100% of the existing places are filled in the usual way,
yes,
by tests and grades and academic achievement. But then you add an extra 10%,
yes,
and those are sold. Those are put up for auction. How many think that would be okay? How many think that would be wrong? That would still be wrong. That would still be unfair. So who thinks it would even be unfair? Yes, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Professor. I think it is utterly wrong for us to even consider to let money to be a factor for the university to admit students into it, because we have to consider what's the purpose for a university to exist. It's not about the profit. It's the purpose for the university is not about maximizing its profit in monetary scale, but the quality of education. So to make a university to be famous, it is not about how good its facility is, how wonderful its building is, but how good their students are, how good their study ability is. So for a university's good, it is utterly wrong to take money into account. They should only focus on their students' academic performance. So that's my opinion here.
All right, that's a strong argument. Oh, wait, and tell us your name.
My Chinese name is Deng, and my English name is Dickon.
Your Chinese name is Deng?
Deng, yes, yeah.
Did I get it wrong? All right, so what would you say, who disagrees with Deng and has a reply? All right, go ahead. And you didn't tell us your name yet.
My name is Mao Yuqing. You can call me Qing. Yes, and you can call me O'Halley. O'Halley. Okay. It's my French name.
All right, so tell Deng why you disagree. Why you disagree with him?
So actually, I'm an art student now, but I don't think science can do the experiments without the advanced facilities.
Which are expensive.
Yes, they're really expensive.
All right, what about that?
Let me ask you a question. How is the facility in UIBE how's the facility here compared to maybe some very normal university around us? Perhaps our facility is not very good, but we are still among the top universities around China. That's why we want to be here. Right?
I'm sorry, UIBE is an art school. It's a business school. It has.
But I think this can be a typical example to explain those school involves scientific subjects or disciplines. I think it's universal problem.
And if you're talking about another subject about what makes a good university,
yes, that's exactly what
I don't deny that a good university needs more spiritual things than just money. But you can't deny that money is very important for the best universities.
All right.
Yes, you're right. Money is important, but you have to consider this. Those universities can get their fund not only from the student's family, but from government, from other institutions. But they can only get good students from those people who take exams, right? That's the only source for them to make a good education quality. So this is my question for you. There's only one way for them to have a very good academic performance. That's to enroll the top students who have a good score in taking their exams. But the universities can have their money from government and from other sources. So how do you understand? How do you answer my question?
First, I want to say that your solution is just the thing I want to mention you, because I already think about it. But I think it's just about the degree. Yes, I have to explain it. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit sorry, because I think we really, the government, I don't think the government can provide enough money for all the researchers.
All right. The issue of principle is clear here, and I want to thank both of you for this debate. Really.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The principle is clear. There are both of our debaters were arguing about what makes a good university. And the argument in favor of auctioning some places depends on the idea that a good university needs more financial resources, and the auction might provide it, and might benefit everyone who attends. The argument against auctioning any places also depends on a certain conception of what a good university is, and on the purpose of the university. And Deng was arguing that the purpose of the university is to honor and reward and to promote and to encourage academic and scholarly values and excellence, and that turning admission into a kind of market good or a commodity up for sale, even some of the places, though it might bring more money to create better science labs or to buy that swimming pool, even though those would be good things, introducing money would, I think Deng was saying in effect, introducing money in admission would diminish, maybe even corrupt, the proper way of valuing the purpose of a university. And so we've discussed how to allocate 4 different goods. We've talked about the iPhone, the train ticket, university admission, and the kidney. And in each of those debates, and the debates were very lively and interesting, in each of those debates, the question that kept coming up was, what is the purpose, what is the meaning of the good or the social activity we're debating, and what values should properly govern the activity? And so in the case of the kidney, we heard the suggestion that there is the value of bodily integrity, the connection of the person, the body, and the spirit that's somehow violated when the 17-year-old sold the kidney. And so that was a certain argument, a certain claim about the right way of valuing our bodies. And not everyone agreed. Some people said, well, there's a high demand for kidneys. People's lives depend on transplants. And so we should consider having a market or an auction in kidneys. And then when we had the debate about the iPhone and the train ticket, and whether both represent entrepreneurial opportunities or not, here again we had a debate about whether the train ticket is just another market good, a commodity, or whether the train ticket to go home to be with one's family in the Spring Festival is a desire of a higher value, a higher meaning connected with the value and the importance of family connection and celebration of the festival. And finally, when we had this debate about auctioning places in the university, we had another debate about the meaning and purpose of a university and about the values that should properly govern it. What's interesting about our debate in about all 4 of these goods is that in order to decide where the free market should allocate goods, where it shouldn't, we find ourselves arguing about values, about how to value certain social activities. If that's true, there is an important lesson in our debates for the character of economics as a way of thinking about the world. Economists often assume that economics is a value-neutral science, a science of efficiency, a science that can help us think rationally about social choices without engaging in debates about the value and meaning and purpose of the activities that markets may allocate and distribute. But if the lesson that I've drawn from our debates is right, economics by itself, market reasoning by itself, is not an adequate way of thinking about the public good. It's not an adequate way of deciding where markets and money should govern and where other values should govern. If the conclusions I've drawn from these debates are right, deciding where we should use markets and where we should allocate goods using other principles, those decisions depend not only on economic arguments, but on moral and ethical reflection and deliberation. Now that's a difficult conclusion to implement because, as we've seen, when it comes to debating the values and the meaning that should govern various activities, we disagree very often. We disagree about those questions. And so it's very tempting to resort to market reasoning and economic reasoning as if they could give us the answers without having to engage in ethical reflection or discussion. But I don't think that's possible. And I think this points up a mistake with the assumption I identified at the beginning of this lecture, an assumption that has come to be widely shared in our societies, my society and yours, over the past 3 decades. That is the assumption that markets, market thinking, and economic reasoning by themselves can define the public good, can define a just society. But if ethics and values are part of what we have to consider in deciding where markets belong, that assumption needs to be questioned. And the way to question it, I think, is to begin to engage in reflection, not only as individuals, but also collectively. To engage in dialogue, argument, disagreement, just as we've done tonight. To consider the different accounts of the right way of valuing or attributing meaning to the various social activities that matter to us in our lives. And so in the end, to conclude, the question of where markets serve the public good and where they don't belong is not a question that economics or market reasoning by themselves can answer, because it's really a question of how we want to live together and how we want to value and find meaning in those aspects of life that lie beyond material goods. We need to ask ourselves, in other words, this question: Are there certain aspects of our lives that are somehow diminished or corrupted if dominated by considerations of money and markets? Do we want to live in a society where everything is up for sale? Or are there certain moral and civic goods that markets do not honor and that money should not buy? Thank you very much.